So Daigo Higa over the weekend defended his WBC World Flyweight Championship by first round knockout over Moises Fuentes in a fight and in a stoppage, incidentally, that was, I think, a little bit anticlimactic. First round, or I mean, it only lasted one round, but I mean, it started off, with a bang. Fuentes came out very aggressive. Higa did as well, as he pretty much always does. And, they both landed some pretty good shots. Fuentes actually looked like he may be getting the better of it in the early goings. But ultimately, Higa was able to just make his power and his volume matter a bit more than Fuentes. He was able to eventually kind of catch him with a couple of body shots and hooks to the head that, hurt Fuentes clearly and would wind up dropping him. Fuentes was he spit out his mouthpiece. He said in the aftermath, he was trying to get some oxygen, try and recover from the knockdowns. But the thing is, he got up pretty much right at the count of 8, and when the ref noticed that he didn't have his mouthpiece in his mouth, he saw it on the ground. Rather than say taking points away from him like the referee did in the Diego Corrales versus Jose Luis Castillo fight, he just stopped the fight altogether. I guess the way the ref saw it is that, hey, this guy barely got up right at the end of the count. He spit out his mouthpiece. He really doesn't want to continue without, trying to get some sort of an advantage. I'm stopping it right here, right now. Which, I mean, I really don't agree with. Honestly, to me, he should have taken a point or even maybe 2 points, saying like it's an intentional foul, basically, that he committed to do that in order to buy time. And it was towards the end of the round as well. It's likely that Fuentes would have been able to survive the rest of the time. But the ref waved it off. You can't necessarily blame Higa for it. He pretty much did what he had to do. It's just unfortunate because it looked like the fight could heat up into something pretty nice. Fuentes definitely looked more lively here against Higa than he had been back when he fought Kosei Tanaka. Like in that fight, who knows? I think he may. There's a good possibility that he was wagering for that fight. He's a very tall guy. He's 5'6.5". He had been making 108 and even before that 105 throughout most of his career, but he had some non-title bouts at 112 and even 115 in the past as well. Matter of fact, I mean, the fight right before this, he actually fought Ulysses Lara at a catch weight of 122. Funny enough, in what was a rematch of their first fight, which took place at I guess it was like a catch weight of like 117 or something like that. He knocked him out in the first round. So it's entirely possible that, at the age that he is now, 30, as opposed to when he was a young gun, fighting the likes of Ivan Calderon back in his early 20s, that, making the weight is a lot more difficult now at this point. But in any case, Higa was able to stop him, and he looks onwards and upwards, it appears. Not necessarily upwards in terms of moving up a weight class or anything, but incidentally, he will be attending the Superfly card that's going to be taking place in a few weeks now. He's going to be watching it, along with the two major super flyweight bouts on the card between Strickland Rungvisai and Juan Francisco Estrada, as well as Carlos Cuadras and McWilliams Arroyo. You got the fight Dani Nietes versus Juan Carlos Reveco for Nietes' IBF Flyweight Championship. And then on the untelevised portion of that undercard, you have Brian Valoria taking on Artem Delakian for the now vacant WBA Flyweight Championship that was vacated by Kazuto Ioka in his possible permanent retirement, possible partial retirement, who knows. But Higa's going to be attending that. It's looking very likely that he wants to come over to the U.S. He's stated that a couple of times now, that he wants to fight in the United States. He wants to cross over. Trying to do it, I guess, even quicker than the likes of Inoue did it. And I think he could very easily do so. He'll gain fans very, very, very fast. I think he's 15-0 with 15 knockouts. He has a power style. He's a power boxer. He's almost like a mini Golovkin, a mini Gassiev. He has that same type of style that those guys do. He'll double up on hooks, hook to the body, uppercut, hook to the head. Things like that. He's brilliant inside fighter, especially. And he's a young guy too, only 22 years old. He's looking to try and prove himself. And he's also said that he wanted to start unifying. He did say that he does want to defend against his mandatory, which is currently Mohammed Wasim of Pakistan, who is promoted by a South Korean promoter, and he trains out of the Mayweather gym. He's trained by Jeff Mayweather. Very good boxer, very good kind of more textbook technical boxer puncher in Muhammad Wasim. I think he's actually good enough to provide Higa with some questions that I think would be very interesting to see Higa try to solve. I think Wasim may be one of the few guys that may be able to push Higa, if not the full distance, at the very least close to the 12-round distance, which simply hasn't happened yet. But otherwise, he's looking to unify, as he said. A fight with the WBO champ Sho Kimura, also of Japan, would be, I think, very easily made, considering the fact that they're countrymen. He's going to be attending the Superfly card, so it's very likely that he'll be trying to eye, especially the winner of Nietes versus Revico, or who knows? I mean, maybe HBO will do something where they'll try to build up to a showdown between those two by having Higa maybe fight the winner of Aloy versus Dalakian. That would be a unification bout, potentially right there on TV, and then a further unification against Nietes. These guys are fighting the best very consistently at the lower weight classes, which is a big part of the reason why, why I rate a lot of these guys as highly as I do. Higa definitely so, with regards to how he's performing in these fights. Even though he doesn't necessarily have the same level of achievement of like a Nietes, who's been plugging away in this game for a very long time, as well as Revico and Ioka, with the fact that he was a 3-weight champ, and even like Kosei Tanaka, where he became a 2-weight champ in 8 fights, may become a 3-weight champ in 12 fights now, since he's moving up to flyweight, and he's going to fight kind of an interim bout right now against a fellow contender before going after one of the belts. And Higa's much in the same vein, not necessarily wasting very much time, pretty much going from prospect to contender to champion within a couple of years, and going after the gusto as quickly as possible. And Higa's Higa's the type of fighter, like in terms of like where I'm seeing him at now, like in the early goings of his career, is very reminiscent of the way that I saw Roman Gonzalez back when he first emerged at 105. It's like this guy's just a machine. He's cutting through everybody that he's fighting at, 105, 108. Higa's the type of fighter that I think could potentially take out and take over at 112 pounds. I mean, it's very hard for me to really give anybody a 50-50 chance against him, and currently I just don't. I just think that he's too brutal at the moment. I think that at even 115, I think, if you toss him in there even against the top guys, against your Srisakettes and your Estradas, I think he'd fit in pretty nicely. I wouldn't necessarily favor him against the likes of those guys yet, due to lack of experience, but I think that he'd definitely rise to the occasion and give hell to anybody and everybody at 115, if and when he chooses to move up. Although I don't think that's necessarily going to happen anytime soon. Of course, he is a student of the great, one of the greatest Japanese fighters of all time, Yoko Gushiken, who himself stayed at one weight class his entire career at 108. And, along with fighting Harada, kind of stands as one of the true standouts in Japanese boxing history as a world champion. One of the true greats in terms of like you could put him in any era, he'd be able to compete just fine. If Higa even lives up to half of what Gushiken kind of laid out insofar as his career is concerned, he'll have a very, very successful career for sure. And hey, he may have a more financially viable career because of the fact that he may be crossing over to the U.S. and may do so at just the perfect time, now that the road has been paved a little bit more so for the lighter weight fighters to kind of get their just due and their props, the way they hadn't been more recently in the last 10, 15, 20 years, since kind of the retirement and or fall of the likes of Ricardo Lopez, Michael Carbajal, and then the kind of false starts with regards to Ivan Calderon crossing over, Giovanni Segura crossing over into a more mainstream audience. But just in general, man, with Higa, he's a fighter that I think everybody should have on their radar, regardless of whether you're much of a connoisseur of lighter weight fighters, whether it's below bantamweight or below featherweight or below lightweight or below welterweight. This is a guy that, his style just translates. Show him to anybody that isn't even particularly familiar with boxing. And they'll be interested in seeing what this guy does the whole way through, simply because he's just such a brutal style of action fighter. His style is that type of easily translatable thing where you don't necessarily have to know all of the little finer details about what he's doing in there to get an appreciation for what he does, simply because he's just doing damage instantly, accurately, and emphatically. That's Daigo Higa's game, and I'm just really interested to see how he goes on from here. Him versus like I alluded to before, the Nietes Revico winner would be a fantastic fight. Both Nietes and Revico, in their mid-30s, so it'd be like young lion against old lion, kind of a old legend trying to truly cement their legacy, versus the young legend or the young potential legend in the making trying to start off his own legacy. And then further on, against the likes of peers of Kosei Tanaka and Shokimura, it'd be, young dog versus young dog, guys in their prime, looking to face off and prove who's truly the best, who's truly the greatest, and who's going to be the guy to kind of carry the torch forward for potentially flyweight and or super flyweight for the near future. So we'll see how it goes, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Peace.